Hello all, this is Katie DiFrancesco, and I'm recording this presentation from my home in Springfield, Delaware County, Pennsylvania. Today I'll be talking about my research topic, which is the social impact of personal genomics. First, some definitions. When we talk about genomics, in general, we're referring to the study of the structure, function, evolution, and mapping of genomes. Any genomes, plant, animal, or human. Personal genomics, though, concerns the sequencing, analysis, and mapping of individual human genomes. A genome refers to a full set of genes for an individual or for a species, and genes themselves are constructed from the molecular building block DNA. So sources will occasionally refer to DNA analysis interchangeably with genomic analysis. In practice, they mean the same thing. My personal interest in this topic developed along a couple different lines. I've had a long-standing interest in genealogy and utilize Ancestry.com, one of the services that markets direct-to-consumer genomic testing as a supplement to genealogical research. The book I reviewed for this class, The Social Life of DNA by Alondra Nelson, really delved into the ways that individuals interact with their own and others' genomic test results to adjust their sense of identity with respect to heritage and history. I highly recommend it to anyone who's interested. Professionally, I work with authors of medical reference books, mostly pathology titles. In the last 10 years, I've noticed the increasing utility of molecular pathology and genomics for personalized treatment. It's not really a matter of identifying a single gene that causes a disease, since that's rarely the case. But as clinical data grows, more and more connections are made between genomic characteristics and how people respond to particular treatments. Finally, the readings and discussions for this class have really brought home the importance of critical perspectives in social informatics. Genomic data is intensely personal, but also of great public value. I want to explore some of the pitfalls that may be overlooked in a field that offers tremendous personal and public benefit. Next, a bit about my research process. I began by browsing the popular press via Google and located many cautionary articles, for instance from the New York Times, How to Protect Your DNA Data Before and After Taking an At-Home Test, and from Nature, The Ethics of Catching Criminals Using Their Family's DNA. Next, I browse my primary sources, genomic service providers' websites, both those that serve the healthcare industry and direct-to-consumer services like 23andMe. Unsurprisingly, these sites presented a rosier picture of the benefits of genomic testing. Next, I researched the history of genomic testing, focusing on the Human Genome Project, to develop an appropriate background knowledge. Then I began collecting secondary sources, scholarly articles on the social, legal, and ethical aspects of genomic testing. I began in Google Scholar to identify the most appropriate search terms, and then applied these terms in the Rutgers Library primary search as well as a few different databases. From there, I was able to use citation chaining to hopefully gather a broad collection of good secondary sources. My conversation with Dr. Reynolds last week also helped to identify some good sources that I'd missed. Here's a screenshot of my research notes online. As you can see in the sidebar, I have my bricolage structured with subfolders, which is similar to how I organize files professionally. This may not have been strictly necessary, but it just helps me to feel more organized mentally. Next, I began to narrow my focus. The thesis that I arrived at for my paper centers on questions of ownership. Our genome is a unique expression of our identities, and yet aggregated genomic data has the potential for immense public benefit. Who owns that data once it's been collected? What does informed consent look like in an era where new use cases are being developed year by year? How do we ensure that everyone can share in the benefits of this technology while preventing abuse of civil liberties? How do individuals interact with their own genetic data? And what are the best ways to promote data literacy to facilitate those interpretations? In my paper's conclusion, I hope to outline several suggestions from the literature on developing national and international regulatory standards that will promote a common understanding of appropriate meanings and uses for genomic data to prevent exploitation and promote equitable access to the benefits of genomic analysis. Finally, here's a brief outline of my paper. The first section is Genesis of Technology and Historical Applications, and it'll go into things like the precursors and development of DNA extraction and analysis, use of forensic DNA for crime solving and for social projects and post war rapprochement, and DNA analysis for healthcare, which began on a wide scale with prenatal testing and then moved beyond that. In the second section, on the current state of genomic analysis, I'll go into how and why the technology is currently applied, including healthcare applications, history and archaeology applications, and the intersection of healthcare and social networking tech. Finally, the bulk of the paper will go into the social dynamics and potential consequences of these technologies. We'll discuss personalized healthcare and some issues surrounding that, like prevention versus over monitoring, right to know and right not to know. Some privacy concerns, including ethical data usage, data sets migrating from heritage to surveillance functions, and misuse by business, particularly health insurance companies. I'll also go into potential misuse by government for surveillance once again, and the cost-benefit analysis involved in the use of DNA for crime solving. In conclusion, as I mentioned before, I will talk about some potential regulatory measures that could be taken and solutions to some of the problems brought up in the rest of the paper. To conclude this presentation, I want to say that I'm really glad that I chose this topic. It's very fascinating, and the research has provided a welcome break from the current events-related stresses that we're all experiencing now. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about it, and I look forward to listening to all of your digital stories as well. Thank you.